Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, I'm Steph, that's Superfloof, and we focus on bringing you the best tips, tricks, and tutorials for mastering the Power Platform. Today we're excited to show you a comprehensive start-to-finish demo on how to build a content submission Power App for intranets, leveraging modern controls. We're also going to cover a workaround on how you tackle the problem of modern controls when they're tied to a people picker from a SharePoint list. Here you can see we're starting up with a gallery to display all submissions. This gallery will include custom filters to help users find what they're looking for quickly. We're also going to incorporate modern buttons to allow for efficient sorting and organization of our data. This gallery can also be dynamically formatted depending on the user's permissions to either show all submissions or only their own. Next, we're going to leverage modern tab controls. These tabs will allow administrators to view the submission details, look at attachments in the app, see comments left by prior approvers, and add notes that will be appended to the submission. This dynamic approach not only improves usability, but also ensures that all relevant information is easily accessible in one location. In addition to this, but wait, there's more. I'm going to be walking you through the creation of an approval workflow using Power Automate. This is going to be covered in another video where we're going to set up a two-stage approval process and configure completion notifications. This is a crucial part of ensuring that submissions are processed efficiently and transparently. By the end of this series, you're going to have a fully functional intranet submission form that's both powerful and user-friendly. Whether you're a beginner or looking to enhance your Power Platform skills, this series will provide you with valuable insights and practical tips. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any part. If you have specific questions or topics that you'd like us to cover, drop a comment below. Let's get started and make the most out of the Microsoft Power Platform. As always, here's the finished app first. We leverage a modern button control, and let me go back into the code here and show you that a relatively new feature that Microsoft has rolled out is the ability to add icons directly into buttons. Here we can select different icons, and we can have the button be before, after, text only, or icon only. And this can be set dynamically. Here in the header control, you'll see that I have icons here, and we're leveraging variables. Let me expand this out. Depending on what we're doing. If we're sorting by that column, then it'll give us an up or down arrow. If we're not sorting by that column, it'll give us the double-headed arrow. Now, one of my coworkers and I have a conversation going back and forth. He doesn't think that this is very user-friendly. I do. Let me know in the comments which way you feel about it. I'd love to have some third-party feedback. Now, back to the gallery view. Here we have dynamic filters, again, modern filters. If we select something that has no records, they're gone. But we can look at the priorities at medium priority. We can look at a high priority, a critical priority. Gives us what we want. Now the nice thing about having the gallery be our first screen is that we can also dynamically show or hide depending on the user that's in the app. If they're an approver or an administrator of their intranet, they can see all submissions. But if they're just a regular everyday user who's submitting items, they'll only see their submissions. Now if we go into the record, it allows us to leverage a modern control for the form. This is the data that was submitted by the user. Then from here we can look at the attachments that were put on that request dynamically in the app, one source of truth. And then we can look at the approval status and any comments that people have added to this request along the way. Let's build this from start to finish. I've done videos in the past in my PowerApps 101 series on how you go to make.powerapps.com, select your layout, tie your data source, do all of that. So I'm not going to cover that here. I will cover the app on start. So this on start function of your app will run once when your app loads. And here is generally where I put my colors and any collections that I want to run once. I have a primary color and a secondary color. And here I'm creating a collection for the statuses. I like to do this if there's a chance that the end users may want to change their statuses in the future. This is just a good way of having it in the app and handy. So I've set the header container to have our primary color as the background. And now we can click here and add an image. I'm going to add the image for the logo. And I've already uploaded the image, or the logo image, so there we have it. Now you notice as I added it's a little funky, so I'm gonna do my normal thing. I changed the height from a static height to the parent.height, and IntelliSense is adding the code for me as I go. Now the width is a little small, so I'm gonna make that 200. Now you'll notice how it's bumped all the way to the left, so I'm gonna select the header control. I'm gonna add a gap of 20, and then a padding on the left of 20 and a padding on the right of 20. That gives us a little bit of space and just makes things look nicer. I'm going to come over here, double click on the image and rename it logo. Now I'm going to add in some text. I'm going to add in a text label, and this is going to be our app title. There we have it formatted. You'll notice that it's popped itself to the top of the container. Why is that? If I select the container, we can see here that the alignment vertical is to the top, so we're going to change that to centered. And this is filling the entire space. That's because flexible width is turned on. That's what we want for a title. The next thing that we want to add in here is a button, the modern button. So if I select the header control and go to Insert Button, that's not the button I was showing you earlier, is it? This is not modern controls. Modern controls haven't been fully released yet. So in your app, you do have to go into Settings, select Updates, and you turn on modern controls. Now that we have modern controls turned on, we click Close. We delete the button we created because that's not the button that we wanted. And we go to Insert, and now we have all the modern controls. We're going to insert a button, and because our theme is blue, which works for mine here, it's going to give us a button in blue. So let's go back here, and we're going to come over here to our button and scroll down because our options are a little different in modern controls than normal buttons. If we select secondary, we get the secondary coloration, outline, subtle, or transparent. But what we want is secondary. Now we have to scroll back up to the top. This is the Microsoft Calisthenics, left, right, up, down. And we're going to add new submission for the title. And we're going to add an icon. I'm going to add the add icon. We're going to do it before, and we need to make this a little bit bigger, so let's make it 150. Still not big enough. How about 200? There we go. Now we have a modern button. Now let's insert one last thing here, and I like to add a user's image. Now not everyone believes that security trimming works, that who is in the app is the right person, so this is a good way of trust but verifying. Now it's too big for the space, so let's fix that. I'm going to click on height and enter in the container 75%. I'm going to do the same for the width. I'm just going to make it self.height. That way if I change it in the future, I only have to change it one place. Now I like to make a border radius of 75, and that'll give us to match kind of what we're looking for in a nice circle. I'm going to give it a solid outline of white, and then we want to capture the user's picture. So if we look at the image here, I'm going to type in user paren period, and then we're going to capture their image. Now we could get tricksy here and we could go out to user profile. We could also set up if the user doesn't have an image to give them some icon, but this will work for our use case. And I'm going to change the name to user. Now notice when I did that, the picture disappeared. My first rule of PowerApps is the same rule of SharePoint, don't panic. It just did that because, well, you changed the name and sometimes it needs a kick. So I'm going to remove the code for the image, put it back in, and now we have our picture back. Now what do we want to have happen when someone clicks this new submission? So I've clicked on the button, and now I'm going to rename it to Button Submit, and I'm going to go to Advanced. Now when someone selects this, we want to have it navigate to the new screen. We want to have a variable set that defines the form mode of new, and that's it. So let's look at that code here really quick. So I select on select. I could do my code here, but I don't like to. So if I select on select, it'll take me up here directly. So first, we're going to set a variable. And IntelliSense is helping me. Let me get my cursor out of the way. Then we do a semicolon, and we're going to navigate. I can't do that yet because I haven't created the navigate screen. But let's look at what I have here. Whatever code language you choose, just be consistent. I always use var form mode because then I know whatever app I go to, I'm looking for that form mode. Basically what I'm saying here is when you click on this button, set the variable. So if I select the variable right now, it's blank, there's nothing there. If I go ahead and hit Alt on the keyboard, click the button, come back up here, it's giving me 1. What does 1 mean? Var or form mode of new has a variable or has a set number of 1. If I change this to edit, then we come down here and click the button again, go back into var form mode to look at the variable, it's 0. So numerical values correlate to different things. If we do view, click the button, come back in, we have 2. We want this to be a new because this is a new submission. Let me create the second screen and we'll go from there. I went ahead and duplicated the main screen because we'd already done all the work on the header. So let's rename it. I'm going to call it screen form. And the reason for that is when we create our form in here, we're going to leverage the var form mode and use the form for both new submissions as well as the admin portion where people can come in and see the submissions. One form for both purposes. I'm a lazy IT person. I don't want to duplicate my work. So we don't need the new submission button because, well, we're in the form. Control Z works now consistently. So I get rid of the button. I don't really need my picture, so I'm going to get rid of that. And then here within the main container, I'm going to add some containers. So I'm going to add just a regular old container here, and it doesn't look like anything's here because the flexible height is turned on. So if I turn that off, then you can see what we have going. And then in the main container, I'm going to insert a second container. And that's going to be when we leverage the tabs, we're going to have multiple containers that are shown or hidden depending on what people select in the tabs. So we don't need this main container to be so big, so let's make it 70. And then this one we do want to leave as flexible height so it fills the space. So let's rename this container to container form. Actually details, I'm going to call it details. And now within here, I'm going to click add, and we're going to add the new form experience. In my use case, the back end is SharePoint. So we're going to connect to the SharePoint list, the flight deck submissions list. And this could be Dataverse or SQL, whatever your data source is. And it pulls in some of the columns, but it didn't pull in all of the columns. We wanted to specifically talk about the People Picker issue within Modern Forms. So I'm going to come in here and select collaborators and contributors. That's a people field in SharePoint. And then we're going to select the drop down. And in Modern Forms, you have to tell it sometimes what the fields you want are. We want to have not department, we want display name and email. And then if I hit play, we get nothing because we haven't set the form mode. By default, the form mode is edit, and we want it to be our var form mode. But for right now, I'm just going to set this manually to new so we can play with it. Now, if I come into new and start typing someone from my organization, you'll see nothing pulls up. It knows that it's a people field, but it's not working. How do we work around that? Well, we have to leverage the old school forms. So what I'm going to do is create a new screen, just a blank one. And in here, I'm going to insert, and I'm going to type in form. Because you'll see here we have the new form, and then we have the edit form, the classic form. I'm going to tie it to the same SharePoint backend and wait for it to connect. Now, it also didn't bring in the collaborators, so I'm going to select fields, add a field, grab that guy, change the form mode to new, just like we were looking at a second ago, and play it. And let's see if this one works. Trust but verify, right? It's giving me weird things here. Give it a second to connect. Now, if you see this, again, don't panic. Just give it a minute. It needs to resolve everything. You'll see it's doing it for all of them here. Let me pause for just a minute. I'm not sure what happened there. I deleted the form, added it back, and it's working fine now. So apparently it just needed a reboot. So here we can see the categories, the priorities all working. And if we play the app, I'm going to enter a user here. Let's do Rose, and it pulls it up just fine. So what we're going to do to work around the limitation in the modern form is we are going to unlock this data card, and I'm going to copy and paste. I'm going to copy the drop down, the combo box, I'm going to go back to my main form here. Now before I do anything else, I want to make this fill the screen so we have a little bit more working space. So x and y to 0, the width to parent.width, and the height to parent.height. Now we have more space. I'm going to give the snap to columns a bit more room as well. I'm going to change it from 3 to 2 and that'll refresh. Now just trust but verify. Let's play it one more time and try and find someone here. And it doesn't work. Not a problem. Okay. Now we're going to unlock this data card. And we're just going to delete this data card combo box. You see we got a couple errors. Don't worry. I'm going to paste. And that's going to add it back into the same spot. You know, notice it doesn't look quite the same, but we're going to fix that. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to change it to People Picker, just to make it easier for me. And then copy that text. Now let's look at the two errors here. The first one we have is the update field, and we're just going to change it from the data card that we deleted to the one that we just renamed. And then we click edit on the second one, and this is the X and Y, or this is the Y for it. So we're going to click here and change that as well. So now this is the actual Y for the error message. Now this is kind of important because you do want it to pop down below. Now we see it's a little off, so we're going to do some things here. We're going to look at one of the other ones, one of the other data cards. I'm going to properties. It has a 24 for an X. And if we look here, it's referencing its title, its data card key value. So I'm just going to copy that. I'm going to come down here, change this to 24, and change its Y to what it is here, which is data card key 54, not data card key 10, which is from the other screen. 54, 54. Now we're starting to have it look a little bit better. We want the width to be parent.width minus 60, which is what everything else has, but we do need to change the font size. So let's make that a 10. Now it looks more consistent along with everything else, but looks aren't everything. Let's see if it works. So I'm going to come in here and type in rows again, and you see we pull it up, and that's how we work around the limitations of the people form. I'm going to do a little bit of formatting here. I'm going to pause the video and I'll be right back. Now I've got the format a little bit more like we like, but I wanted to show you another limitation of modern forms. So if I go to our demo, our second screen, just our blank screen down here with our classic form, and if we go in here and we add a field, this one's going to call mission brief. And that's in aviation terms. That was what I'm using here for the full description of what they want this content to be. So we want to give them the ability to do rich text form. Now in a classic form, if we come down here in the fields and scroll down, we can do edit rich text. And if we click that and wait for it to update, edit rich text, there we go. It'll give us the rich text box straight out of the box. We don't have that option in modern controls. So let's go back to our modern form, and how do we work around that? Well, it's pretty straightforward. So let me just trust but verify so you all believe me. I go into edit fields, mission brief, mission blueprints. I can do edit multi-line text, but that only gives me more room. Still not what we want. So what we're going to do is go into the card, unlock it, select it, and delete it, just like we did with the People Picker. Now we're going to insert a rich text box. And we have to do all the same things we did before. I'm just going to keep it with that text. We're going to come into the errors. I'm going to give it an update value of that, but you'll see it's still erroring. Why is that? Because it's not a value from a rich text box. If we hit period, IntelliSense will help us, and it's HTML text. So now I change the edit here. Again, this is for the error message, and we know that by scrolling down and seeing what's highlighted here, the error message. Now we need to go in and remove the default text, which is right here. And there we have, with a few extra steps, the same thing that we could have had in a classic edit form. However, I really like the look and feel of the modern, so I think it's worth the extra effort to do it this way. Okay, let's look at the modern tabs now. How do we tie this container and the other containers that we're going to need to modern tabs? I'm going to switch over to our finished product and let's look at the code there. Here we have the items for the modern tab. I'm leveraging our var form mode. If it's new, then show just submission details like you see here. If it's anything else, then show submission details, attachments, and approval status. If we hit cancel here and go back to the main screen, we're leveraging a var form mode on the next arrow in the gallery of view because we don't want anyone editing this form once it's been submitted. Even admins shouldn't be coming in here and changing things. So here we have attachments for this list item and we have approval status. The tabs are dynamically set by what we control on the main screen. That's the functionality and what makes these modern tabs so nice. We used to have to use buttons and all sorts of stuff, not anymore. So let's look here back in new submission. We only have the one tab, but I have everything that we need in one screen by leveraging different containers. This container details that we set up, the visible property for it is only showing this container if that tab is selected. If we look at attachments, this container is only visible if attachments is selected, and the approval section is only visible if approval status is selected. So we've covered modern forms with a workaround for a people picker and rich text editing, and we've covered modern tabs and leveraging those to show or hide containers to give us a one-screen source of truth. In our next video, we're going to leverage modern controls to filter a gallery, and we're going to leverage modern buttons, here I'll give you a sneak peek of the code here, to filter and show dynamically filtering on the gallery. Give the users a little bit of extra functionality here. I want to give you a quick peek of the code for the gallery, and this is why we're going to do it as a separate video. There's a lot going on here, and I want to cover it in depth. So stay tuned for video 2. If you found this tutorial helpful, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below. Let us know your thoughts, questions, and any topics you'd like us to cover in future videos. Sharing is caring, so don't forget to share this tutorial with your fellow PowerApps enthusiasts. Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep rocking PowerApps like a true pro. See you in the next video.